Whistle Up the Chimney. Mrs. Millie Mack lived by herself in a little white house in a big garden. Her husband was dead and her children grown up and married. In the spring, Mrs. Millie Mack planted vegetables, talked to the flowers, and enjoyed the warm sunshine. In summer, she weeded and watered, picked flowers and vegetables, and made delicious raspberry jam. In autumn, she preserved fruit and made jellies and jams, pickles and chutneys, relishes and sauces until her pantry shelves were full. In winter, she sat knitting beside the fire, listening to the flames going crickle-crackle. Sometimes her children came for a visit and brought the grandchildren to see her. "Mother," they said, "this place is too big. Why not sell it and buy a cozy unit?" "No, thank you," Mrs. Millie Mack said. "Winter wouldn't be the same if I couldn't listen to the flames going crickle-crackle." When winter came, she waited for the truck to bring the heavy wood she had ordered. It came in funny shapes. There were long, skinny bits, short, thick bits, broken, jagged planks, worn-out sleepers, and half a door. "That's a funny thing," Mrs. Millie Mack said. "Yes," laughed the man, "this is old railway wood, and that's half a door from a bogey loaf." When he said that, a most delicious tingle ran up Mrs. Millie Mack's spine. "Oh, really?" she said, and was so busy shivering she forgot to ask what a bogey loaf was. On the first cold evening, Mrs. Millie Mack knelt down on the hearthrug and set a match to the fire. She listened to the flames going crickle-crackle, got out her knitting, and settled down to enjoy the winter. Then she threw on the fire a piece of the half-door from a bogey loaf and listened to hear the fire crickle-crackle again. But it didn't. It went biddly-dum, biddly-dee, biddly-dum, biddly-dee, clickety-clack, clickety-clack, shung, 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 whoosh! There was a smell of old steam train smoke and a far-off coming closer whistle up the chimney, and out rushed an express train that disappeared down the hall, through the door, and away into the night. Mrs. Millie Mack got so excited she dropped 3 stitches and knitted 7 pearls in a plain row. The next day, Mrs. Millie Mack set the fire with a large chunk of old sleeper and another piece of the half-door from a bogey loaf. She took up her knitting and waited to hear the fire going crickle-crackle. Just at first it did crickle-crackle, but soon it changed to a slow and ponderous "ah-think-ah, can-ah, think-ah, can-ah, think. Ah-ka-ack, ah-ka-ick, ah-ka-ack, ah-ka-ick. Chank-chunk, chank-chunk, chank-chunk. Ah-pchuk, pchuk. A whistle sounded from up the chimney, and out groaned and clanked a mixed goods train, with a guard wiping soot from his eyes as he was carried off down the hall, through the door, and away into the night. Mrs. Millie Mack got so excited she dropped out a whole row of her knitting. On the third night, Mrs. Millie Mack could hardly wait to light the fire. She had set it very carefully with candle bark and pine cones next to the paper, then some thicker wood, making a teepee over that. At the back she put a piece of the half-door from a bogey loaf. The fire blazed up cheerfully, crickling and crackling in the cones and bark, and then, yes, it was! Very sedately and steadily it came. Chicka-hunka, 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 patum, patee, patum, patee, vroom, 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 roar, hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. From far up the chimney came a whistle that was not quite a snort and not quite a scream, and out trundled a 4-coach all-stations passenger train. It slowed down as it came out into the room, and Mrs. Millie Mack thought it would stop, but it didn't. She just had time to wave to the children sitting with their faces pressed against the windows before it swayed up the hall, through the door, and away into the night. Mrs. Millie Mack got so excited she threw her knitting up into the air where it caught on the lampshade. Mrs. Millie Mack didn't care "Who'd bother with knit one, pell two, knit three together?" she shouted. "I'm going to be a train watcher this winter." Twice a week the express roared out into the room, down the hall, through the door, and away into the night. 3 times a week the mixed goods dragged its freight out into the room, through the door, down the hall, and away into the night. Every other day, except Thursdays and public holidays, the all-stations passenger moved sedately out into the room, down the hall, through the door, and away into the night. It was the most exciting winter Mrs. Millimack had ever had, and she never did find out what a bogey lurve was.